Okay, let's go with the sanguine people. Let's see what they tell us. So, okay, in terms of prudence, the sanguine people have no much problem with decision because they tend to love new undertakings. So they are very adventurous. They love adventures. So they are directed toward action in a way or another. At least they begin something. They like to begin something. They like to. They are really entrepreneurs. But at the same time, they have problems with deliberation because they are prone to superficiality and they tend to overlook the difficulties. So sanguine people don't see difficulties. It's the opposite of the melancholies. Don't worry, if we work. That's typical of the sanguine. Don't worry, everything is in order. Everything is under control. When nothing is under control. Don't worry, we work it out. Keep cool. So they are very, they don't see really the difficulties and they see it's not a problem. They have a tendency towards superficiality. This is the problem in deliberation. So the sanguine people need to think twice. They are a bit like the choleric in this sense because they are extrovert. So the extroverts like to make decisions, but they have difficulty for deliberation. At the level of courage, you see they don't have much problem with audacity, as I told you, because they tend to love adventures. But they have a problem, serious problem with endurance. This is a big problem with the big challenge, not a problem, but a challenge for the sanguine people. He's prone to inconstancy, superficiality, and frivolity. He's prone to be volatile and changeable in his emotions and ideas, to feel uncomfortable when there is a disagreement, to forsake what he knows is right in order to fit in with the crowd, to please everyone, to want everyone to love him. So this is really the challenge for the sanguine people. It's to overcome their superficiality, to stay the course. When you have an idea, when you have a project, and you're a sanguine, you have to know that you have a temptation to forget about this idea and this project the next day, and to be enthusiastic by another idea, another project. So there are millions of projects, millions of ideas that fascinates them, but at the same time, they don't put the last stone to their project. So you have to tell them, stop having projects and just do one well, and do it till the end. Do it till the end. It's the superficiality, you know, the sanguine is biologically superficial in his enterprises. So sanguine are fundamentally challenged by endurance. That's the key thing for them. Key thing. We have to help them, like we have to help the others. The choleric, we help them by humility, melancholy by audacity, the sanguine by endurance, helping them be less superficial. There is a guy, St. Thomas More, you see a statue of him here. Since he was very young, Thomas More, the English thinker and Lord Chancellor of King Henry VIII, overcame all the negative aspects of being a sanguine. I mean, many people have doubts about More being a sanguine. It's a typical case of a person, you don't really know what was his temperament. But still, we have some information about him, and there is a beautiful letter that Erasmus wrote about his friend Thomas. And this letter, it pictures a sanguine 100%. He's a person who really loved human beings, he was people-oriented, he loved friendship, he was the best friend of his friends. He loved humanity, he loved to be with people. You see this also in his books. He was really directed towards people more than any other people. So you can believe that he was fundamentally a sanguine, although it's not demonstrated because nobody knew the guy. We just know what people have written about him. So there can be doubts about what kind of temperament really had Thomas. But I was in touch for a while with the great American specialist of Thomas More, who wrote this book, Thomas More, A Portrait of Courage, from the University of Texas. I never met the guy, but he's a specialist. They have an institute, Thomas More Institute. And I asked him, he said, okay, you can go that direction. It's not a sin to go in that direction and say Thomas was a sanguine, because we have indications about the fact that he could have been really a serious sanguine. But More was very deep. He was constant and faithful. He even stands as a model of endurance for all ages. He refused to take an oath, recognizing Henry as self-proclaimed head of a new English church of his own invention. He stood fast in his convictions and suffered martyrdom by decapitation. Sir Thomas sacrificed everything that the world holds dear for the sake of his conscience. He didn't forsake what he knew was right in order to fit in with the crowd. He didn't try to please everyone, and he didn't want everyone to love him. So he is, he is biologically a sanguine, and spiritually he's the opposite. So he's really a man of endurance. He was alone. Everybody abandoned him. The bishops, his family, his children, his wife. His friend, Henry VIII, was his friend. Everybody abandoned him and he was just alone. And this guy was more endurant than anybody else. So he has shown us that he was very courageous. So he was probably a sanguine, because he had this, he was very much people-oriented. But he worked so much on himself, and we know that he worked on himself because he wrote books on self-improvement. So he's a man really who is a real saint, who worked on his human nature. He worked a lot on his virtues. He wrote a lot about virtue. And he was a deep Christian. He became a saint. So here you have an example of someone who probably was a sanguine, but he overcame all the negative aspects of his sanguinity through character, through the practice of the virtues, and specifically the virtue of endurance. And he has shown us what true endurance is about. During his 15 months in the Tower of London, well, he behaved very courageously. It's not just about being beheaded, it's about handling the situation until the very end. So, endurance. He was time-tested. He was time-tested as a real man of virtue. So you see, it's possible. Those of us who are sanguines need to think about the great Thomas More, and here we have a direction for our life. The self-control is something serious for sanguines, because they have to control their external senses. It's difficult for him to control his 5 external senses: seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, smelling, and observe custody of the imagination. These are real, they are spies, these guys. When you say goodbye to a sanguine and you give him a walk, when he's going to walk 5 minutes on the street, after the walk you ask him what he has seen. He has seen everything. He doesn't need a photo camera. He's seen everything, because he's open to everything. He smells everything, he sees everything, he's absolutely receiving everything from outside. He has no control. I mean, if he has no character, he has no control of his senses. The external senses are always in action in a sanguine. So these people, of course, they have difficulty with different things, and they have to practice the virtue of self-control with heroism. If not, they would collapse. They'll be destroyed. They'll be destroyed. For him, fun tends to be a prime motivator. Yeah. If you give a seminar and you have a lot of sanguines, you better have games. You better have games. If not, they will say, "What's this is about?" No. Well, if you have melancholies, you better have no games, because what's the stuff? Fun is very important for the sanguine. It must be funny. Yeah, and fun is a drive, it's a motivation for him, very important motivation. So, I don't know if it's good or bad, but it's a reality. So, there must be self-control with him. Self-control of the external senses, and it's a big challenge, really, for the sanguine people. Look, in terms of justice, they are good at communication because they tend to be friendly, outgoing, communicative, compassionate. They tend to be good team players. They tend to overextend themselves in trying to help others. They tend to be good at putting themselves in someone else's shoes. So they are good communicators because they are people-oriented. People-oriented, they love human beings, they love humanity, communicates well, they speaks well, they listen, they practice empathy. So from the communication side, they are just. But from the common good, the problem that they have is that they tend to be unstable in their undertakings. So they begin something, but they don't finish it. So what kind of common good you can build if you just begin, but you never finish it? You see, it's a problem. So they have to be endurant. Endurance is a solution to all their challenges. The solutions to all their problems is endurance. Magnanimity. Well, because they tend to love adventures. In terms of action, it's okay. But in terms of action, there must be, in terms of a certain point of view of action, there must be difficulties because they tend to be unstable in their actions. So they are good at actions, but they are not very good at action because they begin the actions, but they don't finish the action. And they are not so good at contemplation because they tend to be very superficial in their reflections. So sanguine people, in terms of magnanimity, have to be more contemplative and more stable. And this can give them the capacity to be very magnanimous. But these are going to be the challenges in their lives. Humility. Look, they are good servants because they love people. They are people-oriented. So they are prone to serve others. They like service. They like to be with people. They like to serve. They like to listen to them. They are open to the others and they do this with great joy. But at the same time, you see, they tend to be unstable. So they begin to serve you, it's a few hours, and after they just disappear. And they go to serve someone else. Yeah. So endurance is really the challenge for these people. And if they are endurant, they are great people. They are incredible people if they are endurant. In everything, they can do it well if they practice the virtue of endurance. And they need to do this when they're very young, because it's a long process. Well, in Italy, you feel this very much with Italians. Many people are very like this. So you better work with people that are very Italians, but at the same time, they are also endurant. If not, you just become crazy. You just become crazy. Africans are also very like this. They've been working in Africa. Africans are very, very like this. Very sanguines. All over Africa. It's a very funny biology, the Africans. They are enthusiastic by everything. Everything fantastic. Let's do it. This is a dream. Alex, let's go. Let's move. I love that. The next day, it's finished. Forget about it. Finished. The dream is over. It's incredible. This is a reality. It's a reality. So endurant Africans are impressive, but it's a challenge for Africans to be endurant. Very, very challenges for them. It's not easy. You have questions about the sanguines? Okay, the phlegmatic are peace-oriented. So they are good at deliberation because they tend to have a great deal of common sense and a mental balance. The phlegmatic tends to be reflective. He tends to exhibit a scientific, dispassionate, and realistic approach. He tends to be clear, concise, and thoughtful. This is good. These people are really, they are the engineers. They're very precise. They have a scientific approach to reality, very rational. This is very useful in many situations to have people like that. But they are indecisive because they have problem with decision. They are a tendency towards inaction. They are terrified of doing things wrong. So again, for them, the decision is going to be the problem. The deliberation is not, but the decision is going to be the problem. I repeat, these are very rational people. And it's very, very pleasant to work with them, especially when you have a lot of people, fiery people around. You have a phlegmatic, he comes with common sense, balance, dispassionate. People trust those people very easily. You trust them. When you have a war between tribes in Africa, well, we go to Finland to fetch a phlegmatic guy who is going to be the moderator, and everybody will like him, and we will have a peace, because nobody will say he's a bad guy. Everybody knows he's a good guy. He's going scientifically to try to resolve the problem. Dispassionate. So theoretically, he has not chosen who he likes and who he dislikes. Nobody knows. Maybe he probably himself doesn't even know. And he tries scientifically to resolve the problem. So it works very well. You have millions of Finns working as moderators in Africa. Why? Because they are like this. It's their quality. The quality of being dispassionate and being rational and being scientific and precise. So in many circumstances in life, it's important to have people like this. In an organization like a corporation, what do these people bring? Well, they bring this rationality that makes stability of the company possible. Very often you have those melancholy people who bring the idea. You have the choleric people who bring the energy to build the stuff, you know, and to work on it. And then you have those people, the phlegmatic, just to bring rationality to the system so that it works by itself. So all those people have a role to play in a construction, in a business, or in any kind of organization. They are very useful. Courage. Well, they are endurance. The phlegmatic people are very endurant, not as much as the melancholies, but they have a strong will, a hidden will. They tend to possess a hidden will of iron. They tend to be patient with difficult people and situations. Very patient. And they tend to be constant and persevering. This is a good aspect of the phlegmatic people, as their endurance is obvious. They have a facility, the capacity to practice endurance quite easily. But they have, from the point of view of audacity, they have problems. Because they tend to be apathetic and slothful, to love the status quo, security and routine, to be indecisive and terrified of doing things wrong. So, audacity is obviously a challenge for the phlegmatic, and we understand this very well. But endurance is okay. So don't say to a phlegmatic that he has no courage. He has to practice audacity, but he has a natural strength for endurance. For self-control, he has good things here on the right. He is not easily insulted or provoked to anger. He can stay calm under pressure. He exhibits a dispassionate approach to reality. So this is good for self-control. This can help him practice self-control, but at the same time, he has problem with energizing noble passions because he wants to avoid conflict at all costs. So it's difficult for him to let his heart be imbued with noble ideals and follow them and move forward and go against the status quo. It costs him a lot of work. Well, all this is almost common sense. And then on just justice side, Because he's prone to passiveness, then he can have difficulties to build the common good because he's passive and needs to be encouraged. He has a tendency to laziness. He's not lazy, but he has a tendency towards laziness. But on the other side, he tends to have a strong sense of obligation and cooperation. These are people of sense of obligation is very high in the phlegmatic people. I must do it. I do it because I must. I have a commitment. They are very much like this. I have a commitment. I have to do it, even if I don't want. So this is a good thing for the common good. And they are good in communication in terms that they tend to be sensible and respectful. They tend to be excellent listener and have a great empathy for others. Yeah, that's true. The phlegmatic have empathy. They listen to you. They don't speak much, but they listen to you very much. And they practice empathy almost naturally. And they're sensible, respectful of others. And this is good for the common good, and this is good because this is good for communication. They communicate quite well. I am not speaking about those people who are sick and just never open their mouth. This is more than phlegmatism. It's a disease. I'm not speaking about ill people. I'm speaking about normal phlegmatic people. They're phlegmatic doesn't mean that he doesn't speak. Normally they speak, but just the biology is like this, very passive. Magnanimity. So magnanimity, as you see here, it's the problem. It's the challenge for the phlegmatic. They have problem with contemplation and with action. The phlegmatic tends to go along with the status quo and conform to the expectations and goals of those around him. This is not good for magnanimity. This is a great problem. The biggest challenge for the phlegmatic is the status quo. He likes it. He feels good in the status quo. He doesn't dream. He has difficulty to dream. Yeah, he has the problem with the melancholy is that it's not the dream, because he dreams a lot, but he has difficulties with putting the dream into action. The phlegmatic is much more complicated. It's that he doesn't dream. He's almost afraid of dreams. He's afraid of thinking that he can dream. He's afraid of thinking that he could have a dream that doesn't fit what the other thinks, what the status quo in the society is, what the routine tells him. So magnanimity is something that is very challenging for the phlegmatic people. It's not only the action, audacity, that is a problem. It is the vision of greatness that is a problem. So you could tell me then it's the opposite of leadership. The very heart of leadership is a problem for the phlegmatic. You understand me? Which means that because magnanimity is the substance of leadership. So a phlegmatic person has a serious problem in terms of leadership. Very serious. And it's not because of his will. It's because of the vision he has of the world, the vision he has of himself, and the vision he has of society. He needs to get out of that. Phlegmatics are fundamentally challenged by magnanimity. You need to help them dream. There is a great phlegmatic, Thomas of Aquinas. Thomas of Aquinas, the most brilliant philosopher and theologian of the Middle Ages, was a phlegmatic. He was careful in thought and speech, logical, methodical, precise, quiet, even tempered, simple, and dry-witted. But Thomas was magnanimous. He overcame the intellectual status quo of his time In the 13th century, when the general opinion was that Christian faith is independent of reason, Thomas brought back human reason to theology. Aquinas' restoration of the human reason is one of the greatest achievements in the history of Christian thought. So here you have a phlegmatic person who is a scientist, very quiet. All the good things he had all the good aspects of phlegmaticism. But he worked a lot on himself. He was a saint. Thomas was an incredibly magnanimous person. He destroyed the status quo of his time at the intellectual level, and his influence on humanity has been enormous. He is a real intellectual leader of all the Western civilization during at least 500 years. Nobody has had such an intellectual impact on humanity than him. I mean, in Western Europe and America. This is spirit, magnanimity. So you can be magnanimous when you are a phlegmatic. It's possible. It's a challenge, but it's a reality that it's possible. From the point of view of humility, the phlegmatic are good servants. They are prone to serve. They like to serve, but they have a problem with self-knowledge. They tend to understate their talents and abilities. They think they cannot do it. So they are challenged by the virtue of humility in terms of self-knowledge, but it's easy for them to practice humility in terms of service. Here we are. Here we are. This is the relationship between temperament and character. Cholerics are fundamentally challenged by humility. Melancholies are fundamentally challenged by audacity. Sanguines are fundamentally challenged by endurance. And phlegmatics are fundamentally challenged by magnanimity. If you know this, then you have a direction for developing the virtues. It's it's very important information. Very important information. Why? Because you cannot achieve self-development if you have 10 ideas in your head. But if you have one or two ideas about yourself, and you know what your flaws are, biologically speaking, then you know what's going to be the direction for your life. If you're a sanguine, you know my life is going to be about endurance. I cannot allow myself to be the superficial guy, because this would be a collapse of my own existence. If you are a melancholy, you know my life is about audacity. I have good ideas, I love ideas, I want to change the world, but if I do nothing, I will change nothing, and I will die in my nothingness. So you have one idea, and you feel challenged by this. And every day when you make an examination of conscience before going to bed, you think a little bit about this, at least a few seconds. What have I done today? What about my actions? If you're phlegmatic, when you examine yourself, very often you need to think about, what about my dreams? I love peace, so I don't like confrontation. I don't like to fight against people, against ideas, against things. Am I trying to get out of that? Do I understand in the world I live in? Do I foster righteous wrath? Do I dream a little bit more about myself, about the things I want to achieve, about what I can do, about what I could do? Am I aware of my talents? Do I underestimate my talents? What do I do to have more self-confidence? So this is a direction for the phlegmatic. Very important for self-examination. And then the sanguine. What about endurance? How many projects I have in my head at that moment? Are they moving forward? And the product I had yesterday, why don't I think about it now? And I think about the product I had today. The sanguine people need to be ashamed of their superficiality. It's a good way to move forward. The melancholic people need to be ashamed of the lack of action. It's a good way to move forward. The choleric people need to be ashamed of the way they treat human beings. It's a good way to move forward for them, to be ashamed of something. And the phlegmatics need to be ashamed of living in a status quo. When you feel this shame, then it helps you. It helps you move. But at the same time, you're ashamed, but you know that it's a reality for you. It's a biological reality. So you're not ashamed of being like this. You're ashamed of not doing what's necessary to get out of that. That's the relationship between temperament and character. So never say, I did that because I am a choleric or because I am a sanguine. No. If you say this, what do you tell me? You're telling me that you have no character. If you try to explain your actions by your temperament, then you are telling me that you have no character. You have no virtue. You cannot justify your actions by your temperament, because you're a free human being. Your action is the fruit of your biology and your spirit. So if your spirit is zero, yes, you are absolute biology, like an animal. So if you begin to explain your actions by your temperament, then you are telling people, sorry guys, I have no character. That's why I did that. I am completely determined by my temperament. One of your children come home and say, well, I did that. I gave this to my sister because I am a choleric. Well, you better tell him, it's not because you're a choleric. It's because you don't have self-control. This is the difference. Don't let people speak that way, because it's very humiliating to hear things like this. It's important to know your temperament, but don't justify your actions by your temperament. Justify your action by the lack of character that you have. So you're called to develop the character to balance, counterbalance your temperament. So if you cannot do this, you're responsible for the fact that you're not doing it. You follow me? We need to speak about temperament, but we must not fall into what I told you a few hours ago, which is the determinism, the biologism. And very often with those psychological tests, personality tests, people fall into this. I do this because I'm that. You know, the four temperaments tell you, no, you don't do this because you're that. You do this because you lack that, that, and that. That's your problem. It's not your biological problem. The problem is your lack of character. When someone tells you, I did this because this is my character, you have to tell him, no, you did this because this is your lack of character. Very different things. Now we understand that you cannot confuse those two words, character and temperament. Many people confuse them. And they speak about character when they have in mind temperament. But the Greek did the very clear distinction. The word character means a seal in Greek language. It's a seal that is stamped on temperament so that temperament stops dominating your personality. That's it. So you have a seal of character. So if you don't have the seal, well, you have just a temperament. And then you're an animal. Because animals have a temperament, but they don't have character. Because they have no spirit. So they are not responsible. We are not going to kill animals because they do the wrong things. Because we know they cannot do the wrong thing. Everything they do is right. Because they behave according to their instinct. They don't have moral laws. So a character is a seal that is stamped on temperament so that temperaments stop dominating your personality. So remind people when they misuse those words that character and temperament are not the same thing. One is biological, the other is spiritual. In one there is no freedom, in the other is a result of the experience of freedom. So remember the temperament, but speak a lot about character. Speak about the necessity of building character. Be aware of your temperament, but don't overdo it. Don't, what many people do now, they speak a lot about those biological things. They like to speak about it. They like to understand who they are biologically speaking, and that's it. And there's no movement. There is no growth, no virtue. Just like to speak about those temperament things. It's wrong. We need to know about temperament in order to improve, not in order just to interact with people with other temperaments. The aim of the science of temperament is self-improvement. It's about building character. The aim is not about how do I interact with you that has another temperament. This is just one of the manifold results of knowing temperaments, but it's not the aim of the knowledge of temperament. The knowledge is you. What are you going to do with that? So your attitude towards the temperament has to be this one. It's an instrument for self-improvement. It's not an instrument for manipulating people or for getting things done. You know? And when we speak about understanding others, we need to understand in others their temperament, but also their spirit, which means their character. You don't understand people if you just know this guy is a melancholy. People think, well, he's a melancholy. I got the point. Well, you got nothing. Because this man is a free person. So what about his virtues? I got Thomas of Aquinas. He's a phlegmatic. Well, when you said this, you said nothing. Because he's endurant phlegmatic. So he's very, very different than what you can imagine. He's a magnanimous phlegmatic. So he's not exactly what you think about a phlegmatic, exactly the opposite. You see what I mean? So you don't know much about people when you just know their temperament. You know just the foundation of their basic instincts, their basic movement of their souls. You know the basic things about their personality. But you cannot say, I know the personality of someone when you don't know where he stands in terms of virtue. Because virtue is a second nature. Like Aristotle used to say, temperament is the first nature, but virtue, character, this is a second nature that you have built yourself. It's another nature that is very strong, but it's another one. It's stronger than the biological one because it is a spiritual habit. We see people sometimes that are almost dead on the biological level, physically dead, but the spirit is very much alive. Do you remember John Paul II when he was dying? I mean, he was biologically dead. It was a corpse. It was a body, a dead body. But the virtue of the man, his faith, this was the spirit. It was very alive, very much alive. So the spiritual aspect is much more attractive than the biological one. Although we have to know the biological one to know where do we have to go. So remember always this. You have to know your temperament in order to understand what's going to be your fight. What's going to be your challenge, your struggle during all your life in terms of virtues. But that's it. That's it. Don't be too much involved in the science of temperament. Be involved in the science of character. Don't try to know more about what we've said. It's okay. You know enough. No. don't get, I would say, too much fascinated, amazed, interested in this topic. It's no good. It's no good for you. Just understand, well, more or less I get the point about who I am. And I know what's going to be the challenge, that's it. But investigate the virtues, what you have to get, what you have to develop, what you need for yourself. This is what is interesting. Examination of conscience on virtues, not biological tests about your personality. Do it once and forget it after that. Keep it clear. It's clear, I got it. I'm not going to go back to this. No, I'm going to go back to other things. The virtues, how do I practice them? Because this is what really God wants you to do, to grow in virtues. Not to carry the weight of your temperament all the time, to grow in virtues.
So when we started talking through all the virtues, I was making a lot of notes, starring my notes of all the things I want to start to work on. And by the time we're done with the weekend, there's a lot to work on. So now that we've learned our temperament, is your recommendation going to show us where you start? Do you start with your biggest challenge where you think you landed? Or do we look through what you gave us for the negatives and positives and say, for me, that is a negative, and I'll start working on that virtue? Or how do we start so it's not overwhelming?
Well, first you need to go to the main point of those four things. And just to think about where I am here. Because you can say, yes, it's true, I am melancholy, but there is in me audacity, because you've been building it. So you cannot say that there is no audacity. You have audacity because you've been practicing it. But you need to remember always, it's going to be the challenge all the time. So I am audacious, that's right, I am bold, because I've been working on it. But it's going to be still a challenge at the end of my life. So first, make an investigation to know what about audacity in your life, and what's the next step in this sense. So this is the beginning. Now, and then after, yes, you can take all those different elements of the examination of conscience. For instance, when we made the examination of conscience, we didn't speak about temperaments. I didn't want to, because we become crazy about temperaments, and we all the time speaking about temperaments, and people become crazy, and they think that it's a biological thing. So you can make this examination of conscience that is in the end of my second book, Create for Greatness, with about 60 questions on each, 10 questions on each virtue, or 15 questions on each virtue, and you can come back to this very regularly. And this is the most important thing. But the self-knowledge of temperament is very important for these basic considerations about your life. You follow me? So you better make a lot of examination of conscience in terms of virtues, because the thing with virtue is that we never develop enough the virtue. So we are always trying to make the best of it. So there is no limitation. You see, no limitation. So what I would say the best way to start with is this thing. Start with that. What's my life about now? I've been a phlegmatic since I am a little boy, little girl. Now I understand I'm a phlegmatic. What's my magnanimity about? What have I done, consciously or unconsciously, in terms of magnanimity? And then you see where you stand, and you make a resolution for the next weeks, the next month, the next years, and you come back to this regularly. They were speaking about the importance of yearly retreats. Yearly retreats, you study your story, you try to think in the presence of God about what's your life about, what's your personal substance, what's the gift you have received and how you be dealing with them, but you think also about those things. The main challenge of my life, because I'm a phlegmatic, is magnanimity. How do I stand now? What have I done? What have I done to be magnanimous? Now that you know the substance of magnanimity, you try to reflect upon these different aspects of magnanimity and how you've been dealing with them during all your life, at least until now. So you see, in the end of the day, you don't have too many ideas. What you have is you have one idea, which is this idea. You have it written down, and you come regularly back to this idea. And at the same time, you can make very different examination of conscience in terms of virtues, every month, every year. But the one idea is that one. People that have 3 or 4 ideas in their heads cannot progress. In one idea, because it's full of consequences, this one idea. It's a radical. It shows very much where you have to go. If not, you don't really know where you have to go. This shows you that can be a problem for you in your life, so you have to work on that. The other virtues, you don't really know if they are a challenge for you or not. All the virtues are a challenge in a way or another for every one of us, because a virtue is a virtue. It has to be practiced, and we have to develop them with time. But this specific virtue that is a challenge for a temperament is very clear. That's why it's a good starting point. And it's a good thing also in spiritual direction. With a spiritual director has to know what's your temperament. He has to know that. And if he doesn't know like this because he doesn't know very well, it's good that you tell him, look, I think I am like that, biologically. So this, I understand, these are my challenges. So help me move forward with those challenges of my life. Because when someone has hundreds of people he speaks with, he cannot necessarily know each one very well. So when you go to spiritual direction, it's good that you speak about how you see yourself first, how you yourself understand yourself. So self-knowledge is a very important aspect of virtuous leadership. You see, we spoke a lot. We've spoken during the last 2 hours about temperament. I repeat, have this clear once for you, and don't come back much to that. Focus now on the virtues. Focus on the virtues. Don't enter the psychobiological thing. You know it. It's the foundation, it's basics. Okay. Yes, Paula.
One of the things that I've done, because I'm a sanguine, and I know the endurance is an issue, I have given permission to my business manager and a couple of the staff people, don't let me get too involved, and if I said I'm going to do something, remind me. I'm a strong believer in accountability. Say, don't let me get over it, and they'll actually now taken responsibility for that. And I said, well, now, remember, they're helping me do what I know I need to do. It's humbling, but I find that, for me, that is working well. Have an accountability partner. Hey, remember, it's working.
The accountability thing for the sanguine is very good. That's right. That's right. This is a fruit of the experience of personal life, that you discover what are the things that you need to do in order to practice the virtue.
So when you gave us the circle of where we would land in these different areas, it could be only maybe 2 combinations and some can't be together. Have you ever looked at compatible partners in marriage that go well together will have a lot of difficulty in life?
There is a very nice book written by the Bennetts. It's called The Temperament God Gave You. I recommend you read it, because there is a whole part on marriage.
And you agree with what they say?
Yes, I think they are very good people. They get it right. They get it right. The Temperament God Gave You. I think they wrote that book less than 5 years ago. It's a very modern book.
Is that the shape of the circle? Is that where every place was in? Or can we go back to the circle to see where?
Yes, we go back to the circle. All those combinations are very good. I mean, melancholic, choleric, it's good because you have ideas and at the same time you have a doer. Choleric, melancholic is also good. All those things, that's good. Choleric, sanguine, you're a man of action, a woman of action, but at the same time you're a very good communicator. You're good at people, you speak with them. sanguine, phlegmatic. So here on the right side, we are moving towards rationality. Very rational people. Yeah, melancholic, phlegmatic. It's idealistic and rational at the same time. Phlegmatic, sanguine. That's also a combination. Rational and at the same time very loving. Very good at communication. These are, how many possibilities do we have here? 12 or 13? 12. Well, like the 12 apostles. 12 possibilities. Do you remember the apostles? They are incredible people. They're also very different. St. John. What kind of temperament was he? He was a melancholy. The way he writes, his way of turning around, the ideas coming back, repeating, he's absolutely melancholy. Just by reading John, his gospel, you know, this only melancholy can write that way. It cannot be otherwise. It's the eagle. It's turning around the pot all the time, slowly. It's the movement of an eagle. What's the movement of a choleric? A lion. A lion. Yeah, the lions. Goes straight forward, doesn't turn around, goes straight to the goal. Well, I don't have models or ideas about the sanguine and the phlegmatic, what kind of animals that would be. But think about the apostles. Peter is also a typical case. He's an absolute sanguine. He doesn't even think about what he says. Jesus will follow you wherever you go. Well, of course he will not follow him. He's a very superficial, biologically he's a superficial person. He has not much endurance. You know, Peter is a sanguine. Paul, we say that he's a choleric. John is a melancholy. Thomas may be a phlegmatic, the rational guy. I have not seen the guy. I don't believe that he's resurrected. He's risen. Very rational, very scientific. But we don't know much about Thomas. But about Peter we know so much. About John we know so much. Unfortunately, Thomas didn't write, so we don't know really his personality well. We just know he missed the point once. We don't have much information about the other apostles, but here you have all the temperaments are represented. And the interesting thing is that Jesus chose a rock that was a sanguine. That's extraordinary. Peter is a sanguine and he is the rock. Kepha is a sanguine. And sanguines are not very endurant, biologically speaking. But Peter became of his time what he is, the rock. That's interesting. Which means that God loves challenges. He loves challenges. But he's not an idiot. And in order to spread out the gospel over Europe, he chose a choleric. Because he knows there are certain human limitations. And he needed people like him, like Paul. If not, we would not have gone very far. That's the story. But the one he loved was a melancholy. St. John. He's not the rock, and he's not the one who spread the gospel. is the one who was with his mother. So God does things in his way, in his own way. Good. So you try to identify your place here, and for instance, CM can move to MCs according to the situation. I would say, if you are at the border, if you are in a place that is that foster melancholy, you can become more melancholic. It can depend a little bit. If you are at the border of two temperaments, then you can pass from one to the other one, as I told you this morning. It depends on the circumstances, the place you are, the situation, what's happening to you. But not much than that. Not much than that.
How do you see psychology play a role in your temperaments? When we were talking through the different pluses and minuses, I was seeing the possibility of diagnoses for people with different characteristics, like children that are choleric, and they're in a family of a lot of phlegmatics, and they think their child is out of control or ADHD, attention problem, and they get medication. I mean, have you ever played around with psychology interfering with our temperaments?
No, I'm not a specialist at all in those things. This is the field of investigation, but it is not the field of virtuous leadership. That's why I'm not. It's not my field, but there can be interesting things, of course, to be studied there.
Alex, what's your temperament?
I am MC. I was CM. And I became NC in Finland. Well, nights are very long. And there is no much thing to be done there. So you better live in the inside. If not, you die. Other questions?
Where was Judas?
Judas. Well, let's think together. Where was he? Well, we don't know much about the temperament. We know about the lack of virtue and faith. About Judas, but I have no idea, Ray. Judas, what did he like? He liked money. Money. He didn't dream with the others. Huh? He was not a dreamer. He didn't accept the dream of Jesus' kingdom. And like security, peace, probably. Wow, we really cannot know what Judas was. I hope he's not in hell. That's the only important. That's the important thing. He could have been a choleric person.
He did things. He got things done. The wrong thing.
That's right. He got things done.
He took the initiative. He got things done. He was audacious.
Yeah.
And he was very self-interested. Wanted it his way.
Yeah.
So, you could make a case for.
That's right. And he wanted the material kingdom of Christ to be on earth. So he had a dream, and this dream was a wrong dream, but he had a dream. Yeah. He was not a phlegmatic, obviously. So he was, yeah.
So he had a people person. Wasn't a sanguine.
No.
I think might be.
I think he could have been a choleric. Very good. You know, Raymond, we are investigating now all the people on earth. Yeah, it's interesting.
So is there any thought of maturity in any of this virtue and temperaments? And some people say they're just immature. When they grow up, they'll be much better. Where does maturity lie in just having, or is maturity real?
Well, the maturity begins seriously when you know what the challenges are, and if they already practice the virtue that balance that temperament, then becomes maturity. We say this guy is immature, for instance, so a sanguine that has no self-control, you see immediately he is immature.
Yes.
You know, you see it with your eyes immediately, he's immature. So, but you could say the same thing about a phlegmatic that is totally incapable, has no desire to move forward in life. He is also immature. But when we say immature, he wants also to say that he doesn't fight against his biological reality, and he falls in sins very easily. Immature people are people that don't have the virtue necessary to balance their temperament. This is an immature person. A choleric that has no humility is immature. There is no maturity. He has not grown in spirituality. He has not grown in character. That's an immature person. Maturity is something spiritual. It's about the growth in virtues. So very often we say immature to say he's not responsible. But immature means that he has not developed the character, which means that he is responsible of not having done it. It's not just a natural process. You have people of 50 years old, they are immature. Absolutely immature, because they are just their biological temperament, they have never developed virtues. So immaturity is not directly related to the age. It's related to the spiritual development of a person.
Did your work cause you to move from France to Russia to Finland? And if so, why those other places? Why did you choose to move?
Well, I moved because I had things to do, and also because I am a dreamer. Look, I'm a melancholic. So I love dreams. But I had a little bit of cholerism, so it was not difficult for me to bring my dreams into actions. So I left Paris for Helsinki, where I thought I could do a great job there. After I moved to Russia, where I thought I could achieve the dream of my life. So this biology helped me quite a lot. But at the same time, as a melancholic, I understand I need to be in action. I cannot just stay in my office and write books. I write books, because when you don't write, you don't teach. But I need to move. And I would say for the melancholy, I told you, a challenge is movement, external movement, action, enterprise, meet people, get out of yourself. This is a good thing for me. So for other people, it will be the opposite. It will be keep quiet, keep down, contemplate more. So all this science of virtuous leadership, of course I could develop it also because I have this kind of temperament. But with this kind of temperament, you can develop a certain science. But it doesn't mean that you can spread this science. You need a bit of cholerism, or at least to be surrounded by choleric people, like the great Martin Luther King. But he was much more melancholic than I am. This guy was a crazy melancholy. I am a normal melancholy. You see, so he had melancholy crisis, Martin Luther King. I have not had crisis. I could have, but I have not had. So the self-knowledge is important for those things. You know what you have to do. Good? Okay, Carol, then we finish here. By the way, look at those 4 pictures. This is Dürer. You know Dürer? He's a very famous. So he had 3 pictures of 3 apostles, but we don't know who they are. One on the left is a choleric. The center is a sanguine. The right is phlegmatic. And the last on the right is the melancholy. He had a very specific, it's a very interesting thing. He had a picture called Melancholia. It's the woman on the right. And the others are called faces of apostle. And we don't know who are those apostles. But he called them like these faces of apostles. And each one of them has a typical, represents a temperament by itself.